So in this part of the course, we're going to see the past tense. And if you notice, we've leveled up. Hey, we're in level 2, so we're getting into more difficult tenses in Spanish. So the past tense is typically used, like in English, for finish actions in the past. The same thing happens in Spanish. When something is finished, done, terminado, acabado, en el pasado, that is when we're going to use the past tense. So what are the rules? Because Spanish is just so tricky and it has so many rules that we have to learn. So let's dive straight into the rules. So for example, the AR verbs, these will be the endings. And for the ER and IR verbs, these will be the endings. Okay? So and we have accent on the E, accent on the I, aste, iste, o, io, amos, imos, aron, iero. These are our endings, okay? Awesome. Let's move on to seeing some conjugation. So let's say we have the verb comprar, which means to buy. It ends in AR. So what we do is we take off the AR and we're going to add the endings that we just saw. Yo compré. Tú compraste. Él, ella, usted compró. Nosotros compramos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes compraron. For the AR verbs. And you can go back, check the endings. These are the endings that I just attached to the end of the words, into the end of the verb, and that's it. Now for ER and IR verbs, we check the endings and we just take off the IR and we add the endings. So for example, the verb vivir ends in IR, we take off the IR and it becomes yo viví. Tú viviste, él, ella, usted vivió. Nosotros vivimos, ellos, ellas, ustedes vivieron. Then we have comer. This verb ends in ER. So we say yo comí. And comer means to eat. Vivir means to live. Okay? So yo comí. Tú comiste. Él, ella, usted comió. Nosotros comimos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes comieron. So all we're doing is taking the endings, removing the ER and the IR, and we're adding them to the end. And this is how we would conjugate the verbs, the regular verbs, obviously, in Spanish. These are regular, normal verbs. So the same way in English, we have the verbs that we add the ED to the end, and nothing changes. And then we have a list of verbs that we have to study as well, no? Those would be similar in Spanish. So these are regular AR, ER, and IR verbs. Now, for the preterito, or the past tense, that's how they call it in Spanish, we have what is called stem changing verbs. In the present tense, we had vowel changing. So the vowels change. But in this case, the stem changed. So imagine you see a word, buscar. You might say, well, let me just add the endings, no, that you gave me for AR verbs. Unfortunately, these are considered irregular verbs, so the stem of the verb changes. So for example, buscar, don't ask me where they got the Q from. I don't know. I didn't invent the Spanish language, but this is how you conjugate it, okay? So yo busqué. And I believe that they put the Q because if we had the C and we just add the E, it would be busque. And we don't want that pronunciation. We want to conserve the k sound. So we say yo busqué. Tú buscaste. Él, ella, usted buscó. Nosotros buscamos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes buscaron. And if this is creating like confusion, like why they change the verb like that, if it's your first romantic language, you might have a lot of doubts. But if it's like, if you've studied, let's say French or any other language, they have some rules like this too to conserve the pronunciation. Sometimes they include an extra letter or something like that, okay? So these are for the verbs ending in CAR. This is typically how you would conjugate. For the verbs ending in GAR, like jugar, which means to play. Buscar, means to look for something. Jugar means to play. Empezar means to start or to begin. So jugar, we're going to say jugué. So if you notice, we adopt a U and then we put the E. Jugué. Jugaste, jugó, jugamos, jugar. Empezar, we're going to remove the Z and we're going to adopt a C. Empecé, empezaste, empezó, empezamos, empezaron. Normally, my students, they pronounce the Z like in English, so they say empezaste. No, it's not za, it's sa. It sounds like C. Empezaste, okay? So this all the way down, okay? And that would be the pronunciation. So these are just some examples of stem changing verbs. Here we have some other ones where they don't change that much, but there's like an irregular one in the third person or in the third person singular and in the third person plural. So let's say, seguir, which means to follow. Yo seguí. Tú seguiste. Él, ella, usted siguió. So don't ask me why either. We change the E to I in this one. So it's siguió. Then we go back to our E, seguimos, and then we go back to I. Ellos, ellas, ustedes siguieron. Then we have dormir. Yo dormí. Tú dormiste. Él, ella, usted durmió. Nosotros dormimos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes durmieron. So here we adopt a you, and that's how we would conjugate it in the past tense. Leer. Leí, leíste, leyó. We adopt a Y from somewhere. I don't know where, but it's there. Nosotros leímos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes leyeron. So a Y and a Y. Then we have oír. Oí, oíste, oyó, oímos, oyeron. Again, we adopt a Y. I don't know where it came from, but we had to put it in there, please. That's how we're going to write the verbs correctly in Spanish, okay? Very good. Some other examples of stem changing verbs are hacer. So, hice. We change the A to I, and we add the endings. We don't need an accent on this E, okay? We're going to write them like that. Hice, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicieron. Then hacer means to do. Venir means to come. Vine, viniste, vino, vinimos, vinieron. Querer means to want. Quise, quisiste, quiso, quisimos, quisieron. Then we have decir, which means to say. Dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos, dijeron. This is how we would conjugate these verbs in the past tense, and they're also from the stem changing verbs. Then we have another set of verbs which are estar, andar, tener. Estar, we've seen throughout this course, it means to be. Andar means to go about or to walk. Tener means to have. So we have estuve, estuviste, estuvo, estuvimos, estuvieron. Andar, anduve, anduviste, anduvo, anduvimos, anduvieron. Then we have tener. Tuve, tuviste, tuvo, tuvimos, tuvieron. Some other stem changing verbs in the past tense. We have another group of verbs also that they just decide to adopt the letter J, okay, in the middle of the verb. So we're gonna see them. Traer, traje, trajiste, trajo, trajimos, trajeron. And this one, the pronunciation is difficult. I'm not gonna lie. And traer means to bring. Traducir means to translate. Traduje, tradujiste, tradujo, tradujimos, tradujeron. And then we have producir, which means to produce. Produje, produjiste, produjo, produjimos, produjeron. These are some other stem changing verbs. And we have another list. I know I'm putting like all of them, so you cannot complain that I never learned to conjugate these verbs, okay? There are a lot, so just bear with me, okay? And pause the video and make sure that you take your notes so that you can remember them, how to conjugate them correctly in the past tense, because you have to learn them as they are, okay? They don't follow the other rules. So we have saber, which means to know. We have also seen conocer and saber. So it's the same verb here, to know, but in the past tense. So supe. And don't ask me where they got the P from. I don't know either. I spent the last 14 years asking myself, where did the P come from? I don't know. So it's supe, supiste, supo, supimos, supieron. And poder is pude, pudiste, pudo, pudimos, pudieron. Poder is the modal verb can. Poner means to put. Puse, pusiste, puso, pusimos, pusieron. Caber means to fit, like in a space, to fit something. Cupe, cupiste, cupo, cupimos, cupieron. Then we have haber. Haber means to have, but it's one of those, it's more of an auxiliary verb. So this word haber, we're gonna use it for when we're saying there is or there are in the present tense, which is I. And for the past tense, it's basically used to form another tense that we will see further on. So haber, it's an auxiliary verb, okay? Hubo, no, hube, hubiste, hubo, hubimos, hubieron. And you might be surprised to know that it's typically we don't use the other subjects. It's most likely the third person. In the present tense, I know we only use the third person, okay? In those cases. Okay, hubieron. Very good. So, let me see. These are, okay, and we have some very common verbs, ser and ir. And the funny thing is that these two, they have nothing in common, nor do they mean the same thing, but the conjugation is the same. So I have to teach you this one. Ser, we have seen throughout the course, ser and estar. Ser is the verb to be. Ir is the verb to go. So to be, to go. The conjugation is exactly the same in the past tense. So yo fui, tú fuiste, él fue, nosotros fuimos, ellos fueron. And you might be asking, what does this mean? So I was, yo fui. You were, he, she, it was. We were, they were. That's what it means. Ir means to go. I went. You went. He, she, it went. We went. They went. Okay? So to be and go went. And that would be the conjugation. These two, they share the same conjugation in the past tense. Awesome. Okay. So these are the stem changing verbs. Now we have some trigger words. The same way in English, when you see these words, you know that it's something that already happened. Well, in Spanish, they're used to indicate that it's the past tense. So, ya fui, no? So I already went. Even though already is typically used in the present perfect in English, but I'm not going to get into English grammar here, but in Spanish, these are the words that we use to identify the past tense. So already is ya, yesterday is ayer, last week is last year is el año pasado, ago means hace, last night, anoche, Last week, la semana pasada. The other day, el otro día. Yesterday morning, ayer por la mañana. Last month, el mes pasado. Okay, so these are trigger words that will tell you to use the sentence in the simple past tense. Okay, so before we continue with the imperfect tense, that would be all for the past tense, okay? Remember to go over the stem changing verbs in the past tense in Spanish, okay? And remember the endings that we use for AR verbs and ER and IR verbs as well. Okay, we will move on to the next part of this course in a moment.